in to this channel in this moment, I'm guessing that your nervous system already can sense that something big is happening. Maybe you're having racing thoughts, there's tightness in your chest, ideas are coming in faster than you can catch them. And that's not just anxiety, it's actually what we are all sitting in the astrology this week. So, this is the week where knowing the difference between just general anxiety and what is happening all around us can change everything. So I've been working with astrology and highly sensitive entrepreneurs for years. And I can tell you that the weeks that feel the most urgent to act are almost always the weeks where the pause is the most essential. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what this week is asking of you, why it's asking you to pause before you move, and what can become possible when you do that, when you give yourself that gift. So, we're going to start with what's actually happening in your body and your nervous system right now. Move into some somatic tools that will really help your energy this week rather than getting swept away by the chaos. And then we're going to move through every major transit of the week. There's a lot going on. So I'm happy you're here. We're going to talk about what it means for your sacred business and close with a bigger invitation that is at your feet in this moment. So we're starting the week with Mars moving into Gemini. And before I get into the logistics, the astrology of that, I want to start in our bodies because our bodies are picking up the energy before the mind has a chance to name it. So, this is what I mean when I'm speaking to you, the sensitive entrepreneur, the one who picks up on the vibes. So, if you're feeling, activated, if you're feeling restriction in your rib cage, like you can't get a full breath, maybe there's tingling and numbness in your fingers and hands. Again, those racing thoughts that feel like they are arriving from outside you. This Mars in Gemini that's happening June 28th is kicking off and building towards an explosive conjunction with Uranus in Gemini. So this is a big deal. It's one of the most intense moments of the year, certainly of the week, in a week that's already intense. And that Mars in Gemini, on its own is already this influx of ideas and making connections and downloads. And it can feel like your body can't keep up with all of the thoughts, all of the information coming through. And again, that can feel like you can't get a full breath. There's just too much coming in. So I'm going to take a breath and just naming that this is a period to actually slow down. And I'm going to talk more about this concept of the eye of the storm, because there are moments in this week that are really giving us that still point within the chaos. So you're not separate from the storm, all of the information coming through, but you have a still point within you that you can always access, even with everything seeming to, being upended and perhaps, things falling away, things coming through faster than you can really process. It's that tornado energy. So let's start with some somatic tools for this week's energy. So I think with Mars and Gemini coming to that conjunction with Uranus at the end of the week, and again, as soon as Mars enters Gemini on Sunday, June 28th, it's already within 3-degree range of Uranus. So it's essentially there. It just keeps building throughout the week. So starting now, before it continues to get even more intense, is really going to serve you. So this is where we can get caught in this fight or flight nervous system state. And if you're staying there, that's when it actually only keeps building in your body. And that translates to what you're actually able to do in your business, how you are connecting with other people. Because I think the collective, we're all kind of swimming in this where everybody's getting activated. And so if there aren't those of us who are taking a moment to slow things down a little bit, then really does become this perfect storm, right? So, how do we shift from that fight or flight to that what's called the rest and digest or the parasympathetic nervous system state where we can actually resource our intuition? Because when we're in fight or flight, adrenaline, cortisol, all of those hormones, we're flooded with them. And, that's great if we need to access that energy in a true fight or flight situation. And when we stay in that state, we become completely depleted because our bodies aren't designed to stay in that state. We're meant to come back to the what's called the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is where we can actually access our intuition, our higher wisdom. So, a really simple way to do that is through some breath work. And, Gemini rules the lungs, the arms, the hands. So working directly with that part of your body is really supportive right now. So when you stop to count your breath, first of all, that takes you out of the swirling thoughts. They're still there potentially, and you just come back to the counting, right? And so that gives your brain something to focus on that's not the chaos. And what we want to do is actually extend the exhalation. So that then activates naturally the parasympathetic nervous system. So find a rhythm that works for you. Maybe it's you're counting into 4 and then you are exhaling to a count of 6, or you're counting into 4 and exhaling to a count of 8. Whatever works for you. And you can even, bring in that extra Gemini embodiment piece and bring your hands into the mix. So inhaling, maybe you're raising your hands over your head. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then exhaling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you might be in a situation where it feels really urgent. Maybe you can't do this full embodiment, but you can pause and do at least one round of this. And that giving yourself that extra, 12 to 16 seconds before you respond, before you hit send on that email, before you say something in a conversation that you cannot take back. That can be the difference between adding to the collective fight or flight energy right now and shifting the vibration. And, all of these transits, some feel more challenging, some feel more easeful, but they all have something for us. And so when we come to this, what feels really chaotic, there's also a lot of like creative energy in that, right? And so if you can take back some of your control, some of your consciousness, then you can redirect that chaos into your creativity in your business, into a kind of energy that brings duality into consciousness and actually create something new from it. So that's one simple somatic tool for you. The other one is more available if you have some space to yourself or space with trusted people, because you will look a little silly. But this is called the full body shake. And, this is something that you can end your day with, or maybe have like a midday reset this way. So it's exactly what it sounds like. You're just shaking out your whole body for, anywhere between 1 to 5 minutes. And, animals do this instinctively. If they are coming out of a fight or flight moment, they will shake their whole body. And that's because animals know that they can't stay in that fight or flight state. They can't afford to. They need to come back to that parasympathetic state so they can conserve their energy. And so this shake off actually just literally shakes off that excess energy. So you start just by, shaking one limb, shake it all out. Then you shake the other one, shake it all out, shake your legs, and then you just shake your whole body. Woo! And it feels really, really good, especially when you're in that real nervous place. And so if you practice that and then at the end, just notice if you can find that quietness within you, that still point, and see what arises from there. See if those racing thoughts have cleared even for a moment. That can be the difference. That's all you need, is that moment to respond rather than react. All right. And so we'll talk a lot more about what's going on with Mars this week. Mars is active this week. It's also going to be receiving a trine from Pluto, just at the very end of the week. And this brings me into this sense that when we're able to get that perspective, kind of step outside into that witness conscious place, there's real power in the creative storm that we're standing in here. All right. So now we're going to just break down all of those transits, transit by transit, through the week of June 28th. So again, we talked about a little bit about what Mars and Gemini means in our bodies and in our businesses. This is a couple month transit, right? And so with Mars and Gemini, ideas are multiplying fast. That Gemini energy is quick, it's curious, and it's also prone to scatter. So, tap into this for its generative energy and maybe not so much on that implementation side. Like you cannot implement every single idea that comes through. This can be, we can be prone to that shiny object syndrome with Mars and Gemini. So again, that's where taking that pause and asking yourself, like, is this a now idea? Or is this a put a pin in it and come back when I have more clarity, more energy, more structure for what I want to move forward with? Okay, so the next day is a biggie because we've got a lot of big transits happening. June 29th. So we're getting a full moon in Capricorn. We're getting Mercury that is stationing retrograde in Cancer, and Jupiter is making its ingress into Leo. So let's break all this down. So, first, the full moon in Capricorn, we're at this midway point of the year. We've just passed the solstice. And, if we're looking at a 12-month calendar year, we're at the exact midpoint. And so I'm looking at this as like a harvest moon. What have you built not only over the past, couple weeks from the new moon point, but what have you built since the new moon that happened in Capricorn in January? Those intentions that you set at the solstice in December. And this full moon feels a bit like a reality check. It's ruled by Saturn and Aries. Both of these planets are what's in technical terms called in detriment. And so it can feel a little more challenging to stand in that place and say, okay, really take stock and inventory and say, this is what I've done. This is what I've not done. I said I wanted to be here. I said I wanted to take these actions, and what has actually happened, and getting really real with yourself about that. And this is happening simultaneously with the Mercury in the opposite sign of the full moon in Capricorn, and it's stationing retrograde. And so this is again feeling like one of those still points of the year, of this week, and offering yourself that pause and that grace of, yes, I said I was going to do all of these things and it didn't turn out the way I wanted to, or maybe it did, but now I'm feeling like something needs to shift. Maybe everything is going exactly the way you want to, but more often than not, we get to these midway points and we take that larger picture stance. And us humans have a negativity bias, and so it could be like, I didn't reach that exact goal, or I didn't show up the way I said I was going to. But Mercury in Cancer offers some compassion here in that retrograde still point, where it's looking back and saying, you know what? You were holding a lot. Were maybe on your own healing journey. And like, you should be proud of yourself for the ways you did show up, even with the challenges. Like, I can just imagine that many of us have had a challenging year just based on the astrology alone. And maybe, challenges can be something that's a really good thing too, right? But it still takes a lot of energy. And so this still point, like again, we're in this eye of the storm where, yes, there's all of this movement around us. All of these outer planets have just changed signs into these fire and air signs, and this Mercury in retrograde offers us a chance to kind of turn within and check in with what's really nurturing us and what has nurtured us, and to kind of do that self-mothering thing where you're really like looking into your inner child and saying, wow, like I see that was hard for you. And I'm still so proud of you, you know? And so let's see here. You know, the same things hold true with any Mercury retrograde. I have an episode just about how to work with these, so you can refer to that on my podcast. I'll put a link. And yes, all of those things are true about the Mercury retrograde. It's like, it's that slowing down, it's that review process, it's that reflection, and it's not so much about forward motion and trying to get everything done. And, you know, that Mars in Gemini with the Uranus there is going to be pushing you to move forward, get everything done, implement all of the ideas. And Mercury retrograde is offering this kind of healing balm, this permission to slow down, to actually look back with compassion, what's been working, what hasn't been working. If it hasn't been working, it's okay. You're okay. You are perfect and loved just as you are, and really replenishing yourself with that self love. And, you know, that's going to be the thing that gives you the energy and the healing to then, when the time comes, start implementing some of those downloads that are coming through. And so then on the same day, Jupiter is going to be entering Leo. And before it does, you know, during the full moon, during the Mercury station, Jupiter is at the 29 anaretic degree of Cancer. So again, with that kind of reflective standing point, reflecting back on how you've healed and how you've grown in the Cancer part of your astrology chart. So Jupiter entered Cancer June of last year. And so perhaps you've been expanding your emotional capacity. Maybe you've been really, you know, nurturing and being nurtured by your soul family in your business, in your life. Maybe you've been really developing your psychic gifts, your healing gifts, and your relationship with self nurturing. So before you look forward, take a moment to look back, and how have you expanded your capacity to feel, to hold, to deepen your healing gifts that you are bringing to the world through your work. So for me personally, this Jupiter transit has been going through my first house. I'm a Cancer rising, and this has really expanded my emotional resilience. And, you know, I've been in a couple year process of a really challenging time in my life. And, you know, this is all corresponding right on time with the astrology transit. So like I have to step back and respect it, because I'm like, okay, I see this time is meant to be challenging for me, and it's growing me, right? And so that Jupiter in Cancer has both offered some protection from kind of the harsher aspects of this challenge. And it's also really expanded my resilience, my sense of resilience. Like, yes, I can stand through, I can move through some deep stuff, and I can get through the other side, and I can be stronger than I was before. And the other big gift from this for me was just really developing a sense of self-trust. You know, back in the Jupiter and Gemini in my 12th house moment, it was that chaotic energy on the psychic level. And I was busy kind of like managing other people's emotions and trying to reconcile everybody's stories and experiences. And then Jupiter came into Cancer, and it was like, okay, and what's really true for me? Because I couldn't hear my own truth when I was just kind of holding on so tightly to everyone else's truth. So that's been a real gift. And even if it hasn't necessarily looked like, you know, Jupiter sometimes is like, oh, we're going to have like all of the abundance, all of the good things are going to happen. It really was this internal experience for me that I feel is going to really serve me as Jupiter moves into Leo, my second house. I'm going to be bringing in more wealth, more resources. So I'm looking forward to that. But really taking a moment to honor how Jupiter has grown you over this past year. And then, you know, as Jupiter moves into Leo, we can start that forward vision of what we want to bring in with Jupiter in Leo. So, you know, I think Jupiter in Leo, there's this invitation to really let our abundance and our our visibility expand by being fully authentic, unapologetic in who we are, celebrating ourselves, being playful. And I think that this audience in particular understands the shadow side of Leo, that that guru, that figurehead who just takes up all the air in the room. And there is this real fear of being too much, too loud, too bold. And that's exactly what keeps these, you as a sensitive entrepreneur or a coach hidden, right? And so, by the time July comes, end of July, the South Node will be moving into Leo. And so this is going to have really flavor this Leo transit, because we are simultaneously stepping into the limelight, into that place of visibility where we let ourselves be seen and celebrated, while also becoming acutely aware of, what needs to be released from that archetype. And I just want to invite in this perspective that, when you come from a heart centered place, when you stand tall with dignity, Leo rules the heart and spine, then you give and you show up that way, and you are just yourself, and you let yourself be seen and received. That is actually a gift to others. You get to be a role model in how they can then fully be themselves as well. So you're not taking away anybody else's light by shining your light. So, we're going to be talking more about Leo, Jupiter and Leo throughout the year, of course, and some powerful transits coming up for Jupiter in Leo in July. So stay tuned for that. But want to keep moving here. So Jupiter's first transit in Leo on July 1st is a square to Chiron. So this is interesting as we're talking about the shadow side of Leo and how, healers, spiritual entrepreneurs, acute awareness of that can be the thing that prevents them from letting their light be seen. So, Jupiter's square to Chiron is like Jupiter's immediately meeting that wound. And so it can be this tender place. But with, Jupiter transits, even when they're challenging, they're really ripe for wisdom. And this can directly inform your healing work in the world. And so really approaching this, this discomfort is not an obstacle, it is a teaching. And when that wound is alchemized, this becomes one of your most powerful gifts to the people that you serve. All right. And then the very next day, the moon moves into Aquarius, again, activating the square that we just passed by opposing it. And the moon in Aquarius, it's great for vision work. It's great for that perspective, that zooming out and looking at things from that witness conscious place. July 2nd, Mars squares the nodes. And so this is, again, just building right into that Mars conjunct Uranus transit that this week is just all completely flavored with. And so this is just telling me that there is this larger karmic story that is being surfaced through the chaos, and trusting that the ideas that are coming through now are not random, but are actually connected to your soul's direction. So be noticing the themes that are surfacing. Take those deep breaths, write down what's coming through right now, and notice how they unfold, especially as we move into eclipse season later in the summer. Okay, so then the big bang of the week on July 3rd, Mars is conjunct Uranus at 3 degrees of Gemini. So absolutely the most intense of the week, even on top of, that full moon square Saturn, one of the biggest tension points of 2026. So this is like big bang energy. This is a tower moment. This is chaos magic. And those breakthroughs and breakdowns can feel identical from the inside. So there can be sudden insight. There can be unexpected pivots. There can be ideas that arrive fully formed. And what you want to do is stay curious and watch for that reactivity, because Mars and Uranus can be together, can be like pouring gasoline on a fire, right? It is explosive. It's even hard for me to, so this is exactly where that pause we talked about matters the most. So for those of you who have been practicing your breath work, your full body shaking throughout the week, you are going to have those resources within you to access that still point, to receive the energy, to slow down the storm enough to grab through what is for you. And so, immediately after this, the next day, July 4th, Mars will sextile Neptune. And, even though the exact conjunction is until the 5th, it's within minutes of trining Pluto as well. And so it feels like, coming from that explosive energy, we actually have support to integrate by, again, coming into that witness consciousness, taking that 10,000-foot view and looking below to actually see what is there for you. And that sextile to Neptune is like this spiritual integration is happening. And then the moon enters Pisces from there. And so that again puts us more into like a receptive, actually slowing down enough, getting dreamy, daydreaming in what has been coming through. So, if this week is asking you to pause and you want to do some of that ritualistic pausing in circle in community, I would love to invite you on June 30th, the day after the full moon, the Mercury retrograde, and the Jupiter ingress to Leo, to join me and a community of other highly sensitive spiritual entrepreneurs for the threshold, a mid-year reset for boss witches. And so this is a free live workshop. It's timed with intention. We are going to do exactly what this video has been pointing to, finding that still point, taking stock of what you have built and created, both internally and externally in your business, and step consciously across the threshold so you can really move forward into the second half of the year with intention, with that expansive energy that Jupiter and Leo is offering us. So the link to register is in the description below. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Where is your threshold right now? What are you standing at the edge of? Tell me below. I read every one. Like and subscribe. We've got more big astrology coming up. So tune in next week. And until then, take good care. Take a deep breath.